Hey everybody, just 1 second while I get them in here. Ooh, there they are. There
Good
they
evening,
are.
guys.
How is everyone?
Doing good. Doing good.
Well,
Ooh,
I
a
know
lot to talk about. Yeah.
Adam and I were both at competitions this past weekend. Ethan, did you get out anywhere?
Couldn't end up making it to Mantino, got a little busy, but of course they had an amazing competition I heard and some wild results that we'll probably be talking about here in a little bit.
Yes, we will be. Adam, you were hosting, right?
I was hosting. It was quite the crazy weekend. I don't know if you can tell. My voice is a little on there, right?
Yeah. Um, good. I was not hosting. I just drove down and showed up to Fort Atkinson. It was a good competition. I drove 2.5 hours and well, 2 hours 15 minutes, and I wound up in the same area code that I started in. So always a pretty rare day when you can do that around these parts. So with that being said, let's get rolling. This is episode number 7 of Show Choir Nation. I am William. To my top is Ethan, and then to my either left or right on the screen is Adam. This is a podcast from Homeroom Show Choir. So this show is available on Spotify and YouTube right after this Instagram live concludes. You can also find all of our content on homeroomshowchoir.com. We are going to jump right into last week's results because we've just got so much to talk about here. First one that was featured in our comps of the week was the Urbandale Show Choir Invitational. And we just want to preface this real quick by saying that we send all of our best thoughts and wishes to the entire Urbandale program. One of their middle school directors, Matthew Harper, passed away unexpectedly last week. And so we are sending all of our vibes to Urbandale. They did host a 2-day competition. All their kids powered through. It was spectacular to see. So the results of this one: in 6th place, Walkie Spirit; 5th place, Grand Island Ultimate Image; 4th place, Johnston Synergy; 3rd place with Best Band, Walkie Millennium; 2nd place, Johnston Innovation; 1st place, Best Vocals, Best Choreo, Lynn Mar 10th Street Edition. Only 4 programs at this competition, but all of them packed a punch. Ethan, is this what you expected?
Yeah, coming into it, I thought that's kind of what I did expect is how those three top placements would go. Big shout out to Johnson Synergy for snagging that 4 spot. That's huge for them over Grand Island Ultimate Image and Walkie Spirit. But like you said, I know there weren't a lot of groups there, but it was kind of cool to see how Johnson and Linmar both won 2 divisions respectfully. Johnson winning the middle school and the prep, I believe, and then Linmar winning the treble and the mixed. So that was cool to see. I mean, yeah, Linmar's the stuff this year. If you haven't seen Linmar's show, please go see it. I'm excited to see Johnson's. I know there's a lot of talk about themes and all that stuff, but and how shows go, but that's a topic for later. We're not going to get into that. I don't think really much today. We got a lot to cover. Um, but basically, next up for Linmar in the next 2 weeks is at Cedar Kennedy. And they'll be going up against Valley, Prairie, and Walking Northwest, who they've already had a shot at. So Walking Northwest could be looking for a little redemption as it was early in the year. I know their show got a whole lot better from where it was. So that's a matchup to keep your eyes on. And next for Johnson, they will be heading to one of the top competitions of the week, which we'll be talking about later. Walking it up in that 4 spot was Best Band. They always seem to somehow get that band kicking. I always feel like that's one of the bands I want to see live because you always look at the results and it's like they're always winning the Best Band caption. And I know they're going to probably be in the conversation for Best Band of the Year when our awards come up at the end of the year. So yeah, that's why I took away from Urbandale.
Adam, what's your read?
Of course. First of all, happy Super Bowl. Got my Super Bowl themed cup here, of course. Um, just kidding, guys. But I actually did think, of course, all eyes were on the Linmar Johnston matchup, and I actually was very fascinated to see how the prep group division played out, right? So you had Synergy on top. I think they took both captions in their respective division. And then Spirit also made their way into finals above Instep, which is no easy feat. Like you already said, it was super cool to see Synergy actually grab a spot from a varsity group there. So that was what I probably didn't expect to going into finals here. And I'm sure that was a nice bus ride home for the Johnston kids. Good bus ride home for the Waukee kids. And I don't have much else to say that hasn't already been said.
Well, I don't think it was a super long bus ride home for either the Johnston kids or the Waukee
Imagine
kids,
not.
because for those people familiar with the Des Moines metro area, Irvine Hills kind of smack dab between Johnston and Waukee, so probably a good 10-minute bus ride home for all those kids. The one, Grand Island probably is the one that had the bus ride home. I think that's probably 3 hours, maybe more for them. Um, so actually, I think maybe closer to 4 or 5. But anyways, yeah, I mean, that was pretty much everything that I think we're going to try and cover. We're going to step away from the discussion about what types of shows are good, and we'll revisit that at a later time. That's for memes this week. That's for serious discussion some other week. We're going to move on to the Pike Music Fest. This one took 4 women's finalists. In 4th place, Lawrence North Bella Bravata. In 3rd place with Best Band, North Central Descants. 2nd place, Franklin Central High Voltage. 1st place, Best Vocals, Best Choreo, Carmel Accents. As for the mixed finals, Roncalli Royal Rhapsody coming home 3rd runner-up. North Central Counterpoint 2nd runner-up. Franklin Central with Best Band, FC Singers 1st runner-up. Grand Champs, Best Vocals, Best Choreography, Carmel Ambassadors. Adam, this is your home turf. Did we expect Carmel to win? Did we expect Franklin Central to win? Did we even expect Roncalli to make finals?
So the first question I'll start with by answering here is the one about Roncalli. For those unfamiliar, it's a small group on the south side of Indianapolis at a private school, and they've been really hitting their stride lately. They're known for their prevalence in their division, and I am actually, they did compete in large mixed here, full disclosure, just a matter of how it was scored and what the group size cutoffs were. But I was not surprised at all, actually, to see them make finals. And, I'm glad to see them up there in the mix. They were definitely a group to contend with. And I'm sure that they gave North Central a good scare. All really, really solid groups here. But the thing I want to talk about here is Franklin Central FC Singers, another south side of Indianapolis group, large group known for some excellent, excellent singing. And as of this year, a very, very different approach to their show design and their movement. So they've adopted choreographer Peyton Bellman, as well as Tori Brindis, of course. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out a video of their show. I don't know if it does it justice quite. I saw them at their preview night live just back in January, and it is the most phenomenal show I've seen live this year. Going into prelims, both Carmel and Franklin Central were tied for both vocals and visuals on the score sheet. And then in finals, Carmel took both captions, and funnily enough, it was actually the judges of the opposite expertise or sector, the lay judges, that handed those captions over to them. So how they did finals there was they had some of the visual judges also give a placement for vocals, right? And so they're submitting a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4 for vocals and visuals. So what we had here was we had the vocal judges give a 1 to Carmel for visuals and a 2 to FC for visuals, and then flip that vice versa. So it was very interesting to see that play out. I'm sure these two groups are, although they're closely acquainted and work together and both excellent, friendly programs, I'm sure the competition is pretty fierce up here. So again, 2 of the strongest singing groups in the country. And what are your thoughts here?
Well, my thoughts come into it. We're at the point of the season where everyone's kind of competed already, and we're at the point where you start to see who has the edge over the other. I know we'll get talking about rankings later, but it's kind of like who edges out. And I feel like this competition has a lot to do with the Indianapolis show choir scene. We have of course the Center Grove wasn't there among some other great choirs like Zionsville, but those 2 choirs both got wins respectfully this past weekend. So to see it come out with Carmel winning over Franklin Central and North Central in 3rd, that kind of sets the boundaries of where my mindset will be if who might have the edge over other. Of course, things change from comp to comp, and art is completely different every single day. Yeah, I thought it was a wild competition. It's super cool to see some giants always go up against each other in their respected areas. And I'm excited to see where all lays out later in the season for Indianapolis. But yes, like you said, big shout out to Roncalli because I got to see them one time and they were phenomenal in their division. To see them jump up to tier one, they need all the credit in the world because I know their numbers, I believe, went up because I think is Indy a numbers thing or do they get to decide?
Yeah, so it's number competition to competition, but you are correct. They did gain a couple singers and dancers, but they still kind of are in that zone where depending on the competition, they might fit into small mix and they might fit into large mix. For our rankings here
Okay,
at
well,
Homeroom, we
awesome. Yeah.
qualify them as small, but they will compete in large on occasion.
Well, big shout out to Roncalli again because that's massive for them making finals with all these amazing groups here.
Yeah, I got just a couple things to roll in here. Number one, Ethan, you said that this kind of sets some of the boundaries as to where your mindset is going to be. You know, me personally, hashtag me personally, I'm just going to toss all that out the window because Carmel and FC were tied in prelims, and obviously Carmel made the better adjustments in finals, but each week is a new week. And frankly, I'm not going to keep anything out of my mind here. As Adam said, we also had Center Grove and Zionsville also taking big wins against quality competition, right? Talk about groups like Lafayette, Jefferson, and things like that. One other thing I do want to shout out is Lawrence North, Bella Bravada making, I believe, their second women's finals appearance on the season. Lawrence North has lived in the shadow of Lawrence Central, I think, for a while, and this year might be the year that Lawrence North might come out of the shadow. Adam, you want to say something?
Well, I mean, it's some East Side indie competition, and I'm happy to see them doing well. I think Lawrence North is getting more attention as a program. They're growing back to some pre-COVID numbers. I know it was one of the choirs that really took a hit back after the pandemic, but I think it's good to see them back in the scene.
All right. Very good for them. We are going to move on to the Elkhorn South Crystal Cup. This one just outside of Omaha, Nebraska. In fifth runner-up, Gretna Evolution. Fourth runner-up, Millard North Illumination. Third runner-up, Millard South South on Stage. Second runner-up, Papillion La Vista South Titanium. First runner-up, Millard North Infinity. Grand champion, vocals band choreography, Gretna Revolution. I tossed the last one to Adam, so Ethan, you are first up here.
So if you don't know, Greta is clearly not messing around in Nebraska this season. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Nearly sweeping every competition. I feel like they swept this one. I believe they swept the last one, and their first one they lost one caption or something like that. So seeing a group like Gretna like grow like this is honestly kind of insane to me because from what I know personally in Nebraska are all these Titan choirs. Well, Iowa and Nebraska. Nebraska having these Titan choirs that kind of set the boundary. I said that again, but you know they set the tone for what the season's going to be, and but clearly a lot of changes happening with ATSC receiving I believe third at their last competition, and now Papio La Vista South getting third at this competition. So it's kind of sad to see groups that were so good for so long kind of dwindle down, but that's literally like I don't think that's that big of a deal because I just think that means Nebraska choir is getting so much better. To see groups like Millard North grab second place constantly this season, second place and third place is super cool to see. Um, but Gretna, big props to you. And like I said earlier, those groups that might have dwindled down a little bit, they're still going to be there. So I don't think that's going to be a major change in the future. It's just super cool to see these other choirs start to figure it out and make tweaks to make themselves in that same tier.
Adam,
Yeah.
thoughts?
So my take on this is I view this as more of a shift in the dynamics of show choir in Nebraska. So I think Gretna was right on the threshold of breaking into that level where those groups were last year, and this year I think they've stepped up to the plate, and I don't think they're leaving anytime soon. I do want to add on here as well. From what I've seen of Papio South and ATSC, I don't think I would even call this an off year per se. I just think Gretna is up there and they're here to stay. So I'm super exciting to see this. It's also good to see Evolution up in finals. That's like, man, it's a good week for prep groups in the Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something that I did want to touch on is that we had two prep groups make finals here. We had Millard North's girls and Gretna's mixed prep group. So shout out to those two groups. This is now the third straight season that Evolution has made finals. They made it at Glenwood, Iowa, each of the past 2 years. Now Elkhorn South this year. Another group that I want to touch on real quick, actually, I guess two are Millard North and Millard South. Millard North seems to be a group that is perennially knocking on the door of that top tier of Nebraska show choir. And I think similar to Gretna, they are very solidly establishing themselves this year. Megan Swain has been at work for a long time in that program, and I think her work is paying off. I also want to say congrats to Millard South. This is a group that won a couple of competitions pretty convincingly in 2022. I think they had 3 wins in 2022. Their director, Amy Wesley, left after that year, and they haven't been, I don't think, as dominant since. I think competition choice also factors into that. But they beat out both of the prep groups, and they also beat out both Harrisburg, South Dakota, and Elkhorn, Nebraska for final spots. So that's a nice feather in the cap for Elkhorn, not Elkhorn North, Millard South. Elkhorn South is the name of the competition. There are so many Norths and Souths and Millards and Elkhorns in Nebraska. I just,
Yeah.
Anyways, we're going to move on. I saw a couple comments in the chat about this earlier. We're going to talk about the Tantasqua Show Choir Spectacular up in Massachusetts. In small mixed, third place, Bishop Hendrick and Paramount. Second place, Natick West Street Singers. First place with all 3 major captions, Scranton First Edition. Large mixed placements in fourth place, Shepherd Hill Fantasy. Third place, Waltham Music Unlimited. Second place, South Windsor Choral Spectrum. And in first place, all 3 major captions, Daniel Hand Vibe. Adam, going to toss this one to you first. I think we'll focus on large mixed, so Vibe, Choral Spectrum, Music Unlimited, and Fantasy. What can we get from this one?
Sure. Yeah. So I was interested to see a judges award for a death drop being performed in a show. I don't know if I'm reading that correctly. On showchoir.com, it does have Music Unlimited listed as having a judges award for death drop for William Vasquez. So I'm very curious what that was. But no, it's great to see these groups. It's very competitive. You got Waltham and South Windsor, both very, very respectable and very high-tier groups in the region, come out swinging. Gold medals awarded to both groups, which is more of a Northeastern show choir thing. And of course, Vibe continues their command over the region. There it is. Yes, William Vasquez did a death drop center front of the stage and received an award for it. Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Yeah, thoughts?
Yeah, so I love the Northeast because I had one competition out there and they hand out the most wackiest awards ever. I think we got Rock Your Socks Off award, and it's because we changed socks throughout the show into like these pink bright socks, and we got the Rock Your Socks Off award, and we were
That
like,
should be
let's go.
awarded.
Well, yeah, it was a great time up there. But shout out to South Windsor because that's the group I'm looking at. These other groups have had time. They've been competing for a while, and it's easy to look back a few weeks ago and be like, oh, yeah, we have Vibe one, and then you have Waltham, and then so on and so forth. But everyone was like, wait a minute, South Windsor hasn't performed yet. You haven't got to see where they stand in this state or in this region. And they came out and they smacked them and they got that second spot. Vibe coming out was a sweep. I kind of expected that, but I thought South Windsor could grab a caption. But nevertheless, it was really cool to see them just start their season off very strong in the Northeast.
Awesome. Yeah, a couple notes about small mixed here. Number one, we did have the competition debut of Hillsborough Legacy from New Jersey. So it's not every year that you see somebody from New Jersey compete. So congrats to Hillsborough. They didn't place in small mixed. Bishop Hendrick in third place. I don't believe they placed at their competition earlier in the season. So this is a nice rebound. They also went from a bronze at Shep Hill to a silver medal here. Natick in second place. Natick is one of the post-pandemic revelations of New England. This is also the first time they've competed before the calendar has flipped to March. So hopefully this is a sign of more success for Natick. And then in first place, we have Scranton from Pennsylvania. So I guess we have lots of really unique states converging at this competition. They continue to be on a roll in small mixed in New England, and they're actually headed to Ohio for their next competition. They're going to be at Alliance, which is generally a small school competition, but I think they have as good of a chance of anybody as winning the whole dang thing. So shout out to Scranton there, because we're probably not going to be able to get around to that the week that it's actually happening. Any thoughts from you guys about small mix, or should we move on to our next segment here?
I think we're ready to move on. And congratulations to Scranton. They're always a choir. I think they went undefeated last year. I think we talked about that on our last pod. I'd love to see what our regional experts think about this competition the next time we were able to get them up here. Yeah, congrats to Scranton.
I just think it's interesting to see them compete, not only, you know, in the Northeast, but then they're in Ohio, and then they're in Virginia like the next week. So being in Pennsylvania, like, you know, one of the few choirs, show choirs that competes in Pennsylvania, puts you in a pretty interesting position.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we're going to debut a new segment called the Lightning Round, and I literally just named that. It's not on the show sheet, guys, don't worry.
But named it fast too.
This was a segment that really kind of came up because I was looking through competitions. I was planning out the show sheet, and I'm like, man, there are like way too many good stories this week to choose like just 4. So I chose 3, and then I'm going to read off a list of results stories from this past weekend, and then you guys are free to divulge on any of them that you want to. So in alphabetical order, at Benton, A Touch of Class in Iowa, we had Iowa City 4th Avenue Jazz Company winning over Davenport Central and Prairie. At Cedar Rapids, Washington, also in Iowa, we had Waukee Northwest taking 2 captions over Sioux City East, who we talked about last week, Pella, Cedar Rapids, Kennedy, Iowa City West, and Marion. At Harrisonville in Missouri, we had Blue Valley taking home their first ever program win, Pleasant Hill in 2nd, and then a couple of super solid results for Wahoo in 3rd and Ray-Pec in 4th. In Jasper in Alabama, Homewood, the network, has now won every single competition that goes on in the state of Alabama, so that's a pretty impressive feat. At Keokuk in southeastern Iowa, Fort Madison, who is a 3A choir, took home the win over a few 4A choirs, so a big 3A upset there. At Loveland in Ohio, Marysville swept Olentangy, which was a split caption decision earlier in the year. At Manteno in Illinois, El Paso Gridley Modulations toppled Wheaton North Flight, who I think was our #1 Illinois choir in the rankings last week. And at North Polk in Iowa, this was the rare 2 finals Iowa competition. In the 4A finals, it was Ankeny over Prairie, and then a little bit further on down, Liberty got their revenge on Southeast Polk. And then in the 3A, 2A, 1A finals, it was Emmitsburg taking home the win over Van Meter. At North St. Paul, we had Hastings sweeping Waconia in a reverse of what happened at Bloomington Kennedy. At Northwest Missouri State, Lincoln Northeast took a split caption win over Platte County for their first win since 2015. And at Plainfield in Indiana, Zionsville Royal Airs took home the mixed division championship, while Fishers Sound took home the women's finals win. I'm going to toss this to Ethan first. Couple notes from what I just read off there. What seems interesting to you?
So first off, the Hastings Waconia, that competition was really interesting to look at, to see how it ended up going. Waconia's had a great season this so far. I believe, was that their last competition? Yeah, I think they're hosting their last one. So it was really cool to see how that shooken up. Great season by Waconia. That is the end. Congrats to Hastings for coming out on top. That's a big win over a great choir. But you know, I got to go in on my Illinois because I have to. I'm so biased. There's so many good headlines, but I have to talk about El Paso Gridley. For those who don't know, El Paso Gridley is a very small town. It's just off a highway going up north towards Chicago. And many really don't know about them. Besides, they are probably the biggest Illinois choir that goes out of state majority of the time. But I just got to go in. So on the first competition, they received 4th, and people were kind of shocked by that a little bit, but they went up against some great competition. They rattled off 2 wins in a row. But some of us in Illinois were kind of like, okay, that's just kind of what El Paso does. They get those 2 wins out of state. They have great outings, but then we're like, okay, we're not really impressed. And then boom, they come out and they do what they did at Manteno. Like you said, Wheaton North was top of our rankings to begin this year for Illinois. They beat a really good Waubonsie Valley choir, and we had no reason to take them down until probably now. Their Italy show is amazing, but El Paso Gridley coming out of nowhere. John Schaefer, I think I'm saying that right. Incredible job with your choir. Your students are killing it. I can't wait to see it. Hopefully I see it at Glenwood, where if they want to make some real noise, which they already have our attention, if they want to make some real noise, at Glenwood, they have some Illinois competition that will be really fun to see how that shakes out. But congrats to El Paso, celebrate it now. Um, yeah, I mean, incredible.
Adam, what stands out to you from this list?
Well, I love seeing Fourth Avenue Jazz Company take a huge triumphant win over Davenport Central and Cedar Rapids Prairie. That's huge for them. I think I talked to you about this earlier this week, but this year has been kind of landmark for Iowa City. So congrats. That's a group that definitely went home with a celebration and is back to the work this week. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Zionsville. So Zionsville as a Indiana choir on the north side. Zionsville is known for having a pretty high standard of excellence in Indiana, especially their pre-COVID choirs were phenomenal. But they had a really fantastic and very, very fun themed show. It was about youth, and it was about, what's a way to put it? It was about how love is independent to time. So, if anyone gets the chance to check that out, whether it be, you're nearby or if it's just a YouTube video, I would recommend, of course. And I can't really go in here without mentioning the El Paso Gridley win here, which is super exciting. Wheaton North is not an easy group to beat, not vocally and not visually either. I don't know. Are they Stephen Todd choreo again this year?
Yes, I believe so. I think
saw
so.
some cool costumes, so I know the show is definitely not an easy show to beat visually. So huge for EPG. And then I'll wrap things up here by mentioning Lincoln Northeast Voices in Harmony taking their first win since 2015. So that's you got a Sam Mulligan choir here. They're over Platte County taking a win, which I'm sure felt really great for the group. So I thought it would be good to shout that out as well.
Yeah, I'm going to add in a couple quick notes here. I'm going to piggyback off of that. Anybody who knows me knows that I am a sucker for underdog stories, and so Lincoln Northeast is exactly that. I saw their show last year at the UNL Midwest Cup. Loved it. They ultimately didn't make finals there, but I think they came in as the underdog behind Platte County, especially because they were going into Missouri from Nebraska. They come out with a win, so big congrats to Voices in Harmony. And then also at North Polk, I thought it was very novel for an Iowa choir to do or an Iowa competition to do a 5 or 6 group lower division finals, because you don't often see that on this side of the Mississippi. So big shout out to Emmitsburg, who has been a solid 3A choir for a long time. And also Van Meter was a 2A choir. They weren't even a 3A choir. They were in the 3rd division down, and then they were 2nd place in that finals. So big move for vocal locomotion as well. And then the final one I want to touch on here is Fort Madison. They won at Keokuk this past weekend, also in Iowa. Okay, and I'll touch on one more after this. But that was a very legitimate win over Davenport North and Xavier. Davenport North was a winning group 2 years ago. Xavier's no slouch either. Davenport West was there too. So those are some pretty legitimate big school Iowa choirs. And Fort Madison came down to Keokuk and won. So congratulations to Swingspan there. And then the last one I promise that I want to touch on is Blue Valley. We've talked about them a couple times on this podcast. Great breakthrough for them to finally get that win. And the really ironic part here is that they wound up sweeping Pleasant Hill, which Sam Dollins, who's the director of Blue Valley, his mother, Karen Dollins, used to be the Pleasant Hill director. So the irony is not lost on me that in Pleasant Hill's first season after Karen Dollins retires, Blue Valley sweeps them at Harrisonville. Missouri's a wild scene. I also wanted to shout out Wahoo, which was another Nebraska choir that went to Missouri this week. Really solid 3rd place showing for them. And then Raymore Peculiar has been kind of a bottom feeder 5A Missouri choir for a long time. Clearly not this year. They've had a couple of good placements, and they're starting to move things forward in that program. So we are going to roll into our bridge segment now. And here's where, if we weren't spicy before, we'll probably get a little spicy now. We're going to talk about rankings because here at Homeroom Show Choir, rankings are a pretty big piece of the content we do. And we generally have 2 kinds of rankings. We have poll rankings and formula rankings. And so the formula rankings are generally nationwide and the poll rankings are regional. But Ethan, you are the man with the plan. You are the one who started this outlet. I think there's been some confusion and some misunderstanding. So why don't you just try and tell people why we think that doing rankings is a part of uplifting the show choir community?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm just gonna say who doesn't love a good ranking? It's been really cool because this is a way that I've personally been able to connect with the show choir world. Learning new schools and learning what they're doing on a comp to comp basis is super cool for me and myself. But for the overall landscape, I decided to do rankings because I think that it helps drive choirs to be the best that they can be in their, whether it's in their state, whether it's national, whether it's in their own region. Um, I think rankings do a lot to empower choirs, but it also rewards choirs to let them know that, hey, other people see your accomplishments so far this season, and they are being noticed. Um, and I think it's super cool, especially early in the season when we have only a certain number of groups qualify. A lot of people don't know these schools that are ending up on the top of those rankings to start the season. So it's super cool for them to learn, like, oh, I had someone reach out the other day and say, who's this Indianola choir? And I sent them out a little thing, and I was like, they've been killing it so far this year, and it's super cool because you get to learn all these new choirs and see where they kind of like match up. But again, all this needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Well, the only thing that matters is what you personally think and what you can do with the what you do with your own show if you're a performer. I ranking shouldn't play a part in how you think your school is or your choir is. It's only what you think. And I'll let you go in on how we determine the rankings and why some choirs are up there and some choirs are where they are and what should be. But that's basically the gist of it from what I think. And so please take it with a grain of salt. It's just a numbers game. It really doesn't mean anything. Uh, like in normal show choir comps, everyone gets to share the same stage. And in this way, we get to do it nationally. So that's why we personally like doing rankings. And I'll just kick it over to you, Will.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good point that you make here, Ethan, is that rankings are supposed to be something that supplements the joy of show choir. Rankings are not something that's meant to divide the community at all. Rankings are not meant to be something that is a source of negative energy. Rankings are simply meant to positively recognize the groups that have earned their way onto the rankings. And so we did revamp our national rankings process a little bit for this year. We were using a little bit of an outdated algorithm these last couple years. And so then this year we entirely revamped our formula. We took into account things like strength of schedule, division size, finals or no finals, finals for perhaps lower divisions, things like that. And we tried to do the best we could to equalize the quirks of every different scene. And we also instituted a 3 competition minimum to qualify for the rankings. So that way the effects of one either really good competition or really bad competition will sort of equal out. So we're going to be dropping those every week. I think the hope is to get them out on Thursday each week. And so make sure to look for your choir in the next set of the national rankings. The other kind of rankings that we have here at Homeroom Show Choir, and these are actually new for this year, are our regional poll rankings. And so poll rankings have kind of been this pie in the sky idea for a long time in show choir, where it's like, oh, you know, if only we could get 25 people to rank the top 25 show choirs in the country. And I think we could all admit that that is still a little bit of a moonshot right now, but we kind of realistically tempered our expectations and we said, okay, if we've got 3 people in homeroom show choir who are dedicated to Indiana and 3 to Illinois and a few that we can bring in for the South, maybe we can still have fun with some of these poll rankings and we can kind of let the cognitive dissent flow from here or there, and everyone can give their own individual take that then all kind of synergizes into one. And so that's the goal of the regional poll rankings, is to have it be a combination of the formula and the power rankings. So that way it is a formula. We do add up the values, but it's also a power ranking because it's the power rankings of each individual panelist. And so Adam is a panelist for our Indiana rankings. And so Adam, I just want you to talk about your experience and your criteria as a poll voter. You know, what do you look for when ranking choirs? How big do like the previous weekend's competitions play into it? And ultimately, when you see the final rankings and they're different than what your ballot looked like, do you hate your other voters, or is it just kind of a constructive difference of opinion?
Yeah. So, I'm good friends with a lot of the people that I get to work with when I'm doing these polls, and I do think it's really cool that everyone gets to contribute. And I also think it's really cool that they all get to contribute their opinions, which are of course lesser than mine, and mine are always right. No, um, but jokes aside, I definitely I watch when I watch these choirs. I like to score them individually. So I score for technique, I score for artistry, I score for effect. And what I like to do is go through and update to the best of my ability the shifts from week to week. So regionally, my focus is Indiana, um, and we have, I believe, now 4 people on the panel for our polling in that region. Correct? 4, I think.
I think 4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah. So, when you're taking a look at those, if you see something, you're like, wow, I agree with that. That was me. And if you don't agree with it, it was the other 75%. Just, just kidding. But I do also want to mention with the power rankings, and I was actually a little confused about this at first. The 3 times, the rule about competing 3 times was what had me a little confused at first from last week, just because of how early season it is. But I think that's also important for anyone that's going through and doing these regional rankings. Is that groups are going to improve from week to week, and they all have different starting points, right? As where a lot of Iowa groups start right off the bat in January, there's California groups that won't start until like late February, March, and might even continue their season all the way out through April. So, within your own region, I think the nice thing about having that panel of people is that they're really in depth in their knowledge. They're seeing these choirs in person from week to week, which definitely cannot be underestimated. But I also am really, really interested to see how our algorithm plays out. Like Michael said, it was reworked this year, and so I'm not super involved in that, but I of course enjoy just watching from the side and seeing all these groups be highlighted on a national stage as where they may have not been noticed otherwise.
All right. Yeah. Ethan, any other comments to add on? Otherwise, we can head into the preview portion.
No, yeah, just one more little thing. He went on about like the 3 comp minimum we do. Just so you know, it like he said, every season's different. Everyone competes different. Like Will said before, no score sheet is the same at competitions around the world. So ranking these stuff is basically impossible. We just try to the best of our possibility. But saying the 3 comp minimum, for great example is Waconia does 5 to 6 competitions a year. They just finished. Los Allen hasn't gone yet. Burbank hasn't gone. John Burroughs, Clinton starts this weekend, and they only do 3 comps. So just so you know, you have to qualify to make the rankings. And I can't wait to see how it ends up at the end of the year because it's always so fun to see who ends up where.
All right. Yeah. With that being said, we are going to move into the preview portion of today's podcast. Couple miscellaneous notes here before we start. As Ethan just said, Clinton is debuting this weekend. They'll be at the Homewood South Central Classic. Their closest competition will most likely be the Oak Mountain Singers. It's a thing every year. Oh, this is the year. This is the year the streak ends. The sky is falling. I don't think it's the year until it happens. Do I think Oak Mountain will probably give them a decent run? Sure. Do I think Oak Mountain will beat them? Yeah, probably not. The other thing, just because we talked about a couple of these groups, Fort Madison and Lincoln Northeast, both first-time winners in a long time last weekend, they will square off at the Wahoo Court of Champions this weekend. So I think probably one of these 2 groups is going to walk out a 2-time consecutive winner this season. Moving on to the first comp that we're going to cover pretty in depth, we're going to go back to the South to the inaugural Tupelo King City Classic, the mixed division lineup here: Oak Grove Center Stage, Jackson Prep Revion, Auburn Varsity Singers, Madison Central Reveille, Grenada Visions, and Jackson Academy Encore. Do either of you guys have any burning thoughts or on how this is going to play out, or is it just kind of going to be a free-for-all?
Well, first off, I just think it's super cool because rarely you get groups who make big leaps and make upsets so early in the year, and then they all converge into one competition where they get to go up against each other. So seeing groups like Auburn who beat Homewood, you have Grenada who's on the uprise right now, and then Jackson Academy, I believe they beat Brio. Like it's insane that these choirs are actually coming together and going up against each other. So pretty much early in their seasons too. Um, well, they're about like almost to the halfway point, I believe. But if I had to say my personal placements on this, I've heard so many good things about Grenada. I think Grenada's gonna get the top spot, which is kind of a wild take because I think Auburn had a really good win and they've had some really good outings. But I'm gonna give them the second spot. Jackson Academy, I think they had an insane jump with Sam Mulligan doing their choreography. I think that they're almost in that upper echelon, like we talked about. They're on the way there. Um, Madison Central, I have them in the four, and then I have Jackson Prep rounding it out in the five.
Adam, what you got going?
Alrighty, I'll just go for it. I'm playing it safe. I'm going to call Auburn both captions. Jackson first runner-up, nice and close. And then I have Granite in third. Will wrote them in as a wild card group, and I couldn't put it better myself. I like to play it safe. I hold my cards close. I got Jackson Prep in fourth. And I also have, Oak Grove and Madison Central. So, wait. Do I? Yeah.
I think we've only got 5 spots here for finals. So
yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, there's gonna be one good choir who probably won't make it in, which
Even
is
more
always.
than that. I mean, you've got Auburn along. Yeah.
Yeah, so very interesting. We've got one person with Grenada in first right now. We've got one person with Grenada in third right now. I think I'm going to split the difference. Until Auburn shows us that they're not a winning group, Auburn is a winning group. You don't just beat Homewood out of the blue, right? And so I'll take Auburn for the win. Grenada, this is going to be one of the Grenada years. Like there were a couple of years in the late teens and early 20s that were like the Grenada years. Maybe not these past couple of years. When Grenada's on, they're on. When they're off, they're off. And I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those years that Grenada is on pretty consistently. I'll take Visions at the 2, hashtag V4L, as all of the meme posts I see say. At the 3rd, I'll take Jackson Academy. Obviously, you don't beat Brio by being a slouch either, but I think of these 3 groups, I just think JA is going to come out on the shortest end of the stick here. In 4th, I actually have Auburn Elan. Not the best year for either of Auburn's single-gender groups. Both of them took it on the chin at Tallahassee to start the season, but I think that Elan is just ahead enough of the rest of the field. You look at Madison Central, that's a group with a new director this year. Jackson Prep, that's a group that struggled a little bit so far this season. And Oak Grove, they did final at Mississippi State, but it was a long time coming for them. And I just don't think they are up to the standards that a lot of the other large mixed groups are. They did move up from middle to large mixed this year. And there are no middle mixed or small mixed groups at this competition. So weird to see that when I think we've got 7 at West Jones this weekend in the same state and none at Tupelo. So very interesting. We're going to move up the Mississippi River to Davenport, Iowa in the Adler Theater. That is a couple blocks off the banks of the Mississippi. The mixed division lineup at this competition, we've got Janesville Crag, Bettendorf, Clinton, Iowa, not Clinton, Mississippi, Iowa City Liberty, Western Dubuque, Lewis Central, Cedar Rapids, Jefferson, Mitchell, Davenport North, Mundelein, and Johnston. That's a lot of names. Definitely some great choirs in there. What are we thinking at the top?
No, yeah. So this is one of those comps that I wish I knew more about. I wish I knew more about the history. Like personally, like of course I can look them up now, but personally wish I knew the history at this competition and know where all these groups stand with each other. It's just one of those states that I always wish I just personally knew more knowledge about. But again, you're having choirs from Illinois, you're coming choirs from South Dakota, all merging on the banks of the Mississippi River, which is super cool. But again, I wish I personally knew more. But I'm gonna give you my top 3. I think there is a possibility for Mitchell to pull off kind of not to the same extent because El Paso only has like 400 kids. I saw a comment earlier, like 400 kids in their school. But I think Mitchell has an opportunity to kind of shock people and take a win here. But I don't have that happening. I have Johnson with the GC, and I have Mitchell, and then I actually have this might be a surprise. I really don't know. I have Lewis Central in the 3rd spot, and that's kind of all. That's how far I'm gonna go because after that, you don't want to hear from me because after that, I
You don't know about
know.
Mundelein
No.
from
I know.
Illinois?
Okay, I know about Mundelein, and they performed last week, and I believe, but I just think that there's so many choirs, and they're all at the same level that to me, I don't feel like it's my place to put them in line.
Mm. Middle of pack is always a hard place to be a judge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, holding my cards close. Full disclosure, I got Johnston, both captions here. First runner-up, Friendicu. And I put Cedar Rapids Jeff in third, actually, with Mundelein following. And remind me, is this five or finals? Five.
We've got
Six.
we've got
Six?
six.
Six? I can't count. Cool. And then I had Lewis Central and Davenport North. How about you? Thoughts, Will?
Yeah. This one's actually super interesting because I saw multiple of these choirs last weekend at Fort Atkinson. I saw Janesville Craig and I saw Mundelein last weekend. So I've got to read on a couple of them. I'm looking at this as kind of the ultimate get back competition. We talked about get back comps in relation to the South and Jassy a couple weeks ago. To me, this is kind of the ultimate get back comp. Johnston coming off a loss to Linn-Mar. Mitchell coming off a loss to Lincoln East. Mundelein coming off a loss to Chesterton. Davenport North coming off a loss to Fort Madison. Those are four groups that are all on the losing end of what I would presume to be close losses. I think Mundelein actually did take a caption away from Chesterton, which I personally wasn't expecting after the daytime. And then further on down, you've got Iowa City Liberty, Western Dubuque, and Bettendorf all coming off solid finals appearances. I actually saw Bettendorf too. I totally forgot they were here. And then of the groups who missed finals their last time out, you actually have Lewis Central and Cedar Rapids Jefferson, who both of you had as your third place groups. So I'll go for a full six here. I will go Johnston at the one with two captions with vocals and choreo, Mitchell at the two with band. I'll take Mundelein at the three, Iowa City Liberty at the four, Davenport North at the five, and Western Dubuque at the six. So I feel terrible leaving Lewis Central on the outside of finals. I'm a big Lewis Central fan. I have been ever since their last director change. I think Corporation has been on a consistently another level since then. They're probably the second best show choir in Western Iowa after Sioux City East. But ultimately, I think Davenport is one of those competitions that, like Ethan talked about, it draws groups from Illinois, it draws groups from South Dakota, it draws groups from Wisconsin. In the past, I think Noblesville has gone here. So it just draws so many fantastic groups that if you're going to make finals, you're going to earn it. And so ultimately, those are the six groups that I have in. We are going to move over to Indiana now for our last two competitions of the week. And this is just one of those weeks where Indiana pulls out all the stops, and you got no choice but to put them in as two comps of the week. So our first one is the Chesterton Trojan Classic. In the large mixed division, we've got Carmel, Marysville, Brandon, Wheaton North, Northrop, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. In the small mixed division, some of the more notable groups, we've got Austin Dimensions, Allen B. Shepherd Nova, Herscher Class Act, and Norwell Night Moves. And then in the women's division, because we've got a women's finals here, Carmel Accents, Brandon Bellas, Northrop Allure, Norwell Night Stars, and McAuley Mac Melody. We've got choirs from Indiana, the home state multiple from Illinois. We've got Marysville from Ohio and Brandon from Mississippi. Ethan, how does this all converge on the banks of Lake Michigan?
So this is kind of crazy. I know this is not even a national competition, but it is. It's so weird to me because Indiana, besides Indianapolis, is kind of like not like the place where everyone wants to go all at once for a national competition. But again, it's Chesterton, Indiana, which is near Gary, Indiana, I believe. Like you said, and kind of near Lake Michigan. So it's kind of cool to be like, oh, it might be like the middle of the year, but all these groups are just like, screw it, let's go face some competition. Let's get our hands dirty. Let's see how we can come out with this. But I do want to talk about the small mix because it's super cool to see top choirs from Indiana and Illinois go at each other. In our poll rankings, all these choirs have been ranked, I believe, pretty high, or I personally think that they should be pretty high. You have Austin, Allen B. Shepherd, who they've been very solid from the past couple of years in Illinois, from what I've known. Herscher, who's a top group in Illinois right now, and then is it Norwell? Norwell is a top
Norwell,
group.
yeah.
Yeah. Wait, is it? Did you say Narwhal?
No, Norwell.
Norwell. I was gonna.
It's just what I promise. It's nothing difficult. It's just what you think it is.
Okay, I thought you said something completely different. My one AirPod,
Fun
give
fact.
me a little break.
fun fact about Norwell, they are 13 singer dancers, and just 13, and they are fantastic.
See, that's insane because I know we talked about it earlier, but when we do the rankings, we personally don't know unless we watch.
Mm-hmm.
So we're constantly seeing this group go up and up in the rankings, especially in
Yes.
their state. So to hear that they only have 13 is insane.
They fill the room
Um,
with sound, and it's
that's
just 13.
that's incredible. If I'm gonna have to go on some predictions, I think the home state will prevail. I think Carmel is gonna take the win here. Um, Kind of a shocking thing. I think Brandon Brio might get second here. And the thing is always, I say might, like you think, like, oh, he doesn't think. Oh, like the thing is, they can win this comp. Like it's anyone could win this comp. I think. I just think Carmel has the edge over Brandon Brio with the travel and everything. But again, I think those top two will be close. I don't know much about Marysville this year. I know they've won a competition, but I think they're going to take that third spot. Oh, they two this year.
Or is it
Um,
3, even like 2, I think.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
But I think,
3. I know for sure 2 over Olentangy. Probably a third one somewhere in there too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
They've
then,
been undefeated.
yeah. And then I hate to put them in fourth, but Wheaton North, I don't know after that loss to El Paso. I don't know how well they'll stand up against some national powerhouses. So I'm going to have them the 4. And then I actually have Austin in that 5th spot. I think they have the opportunity to make finals here. So going down the list again, I got Carmel. I'm going to go Brandon. I'm going to go Marysville and Wheaton North and Austin. But again, that probably means nothing. It'll probably be Wheaton North winning, Marysville second, Brandon Brio, and I don't know, 4th. So end all be all, what I say doesn't matter, but I'm very interested to see what you guys think.
Yeah, so I actually don't know if they structure finals by all mixed together. Carmel comes here every year, and it's very interesting to see groups travel from so far. Chesterton's beautiful. I was up there this last summer, this last fall actually, for an all-state show choir event, and it's actually not too bad. I promise. The dunes are beautiful here, but it's not the worst place to drive up to from Mississippi. I have Carmel both captions. I have I feel I have Brandon in second, Marysville in third, and Wheaton North taking that 4th spot. I instinctively want to say that because this is the way that this competition is, I would not be shocked to see Wheaton take second in vocals and then still end up in 4th place. Something like, those sort of division splits between vocals and visuals, and I think it will definitely depend on how the judges communicate and the intervals between their scoring. And then I think if there's a 5th group that slides into finals, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it 5 groups? Would a small group be eligible?
I believe so. The schedule I saw just said mixed finalists. It did not say large mixed finalists.
Yes. Okay. Well, then I will go ahead and second that. No controversy here between me and Ethan. I have Austin in that 5th spot as well. And then for women's finals, Carmel, both captions, Brandon, and then Norwell and Northrop in 4th.
Well, thank goodness we have Will in this podcast to shake it up because I know he's about to shake it up a little bit for us.
It's 2 to
so
4.
We all don't look like
man.
idiots.
Spots 2 to 4. What are we thinking?
Yep. All right. I'll take a crack at things. I'll go Carmel at the 1. I'll take Marysville at the 2. Brandon at the 3. Wheaton North at the 4. I already said Marysville. And then for the 5, I'll actually take Dwight D. Eisenhower. I haven't seen him after the pandemic, but I did see multiple of their shows before the pandemic. I think for a group their size, they punch really well. As for the women's finals, I'll take Carmel, Brandon, and then Norwell sliding in there at the 3. I know Northrop was a good program in the late 2010s. Don't know how much of that is left now. So even though Norwell Night Stars don't have a lot of people in their group, I'll take a flyer on them. Yeah, I'll take a flyer on them to beat Northrop for that last 3rd final spots. Also, Adam, you're the Indiana guy here. 28 minutes per group. What's up with that?
Yeah. So depending on the competition and how it's regulated, that will vary a little bit. I imagine since this isn't an Indiana State School Music Association certified site, that they'll have a little bit more flexibility for groups. The general rule is we don't want to disqualify anyone unless they make it happen, right? So I think it should be good. From what I know of all of these groups, I would only be maybe a little worried about Marysville, but they've got a pretty big set, but also a solid crew. I think that also, as a general rule, Indiana crews are pretty receptive to helping out. So I don't foresee that being a problem, but it definitely is interesting that you point that out. That's a pretty narrow time frame.
No, yeah, Indiana was always super cool when we used to go over there because we used to have practices just for how to get stuff on stage at
Oh my
Indiana,
gosh.
and we would be timed. Our
Yeah.
our director would sit there with a stopwatch and literally just watch us all try to put it
Yep.
together all and try to get in time.
And for
And like shows are like 50,
reference,
yeah,
our
shows are like
organized
15, 18
events
minutes.
Our organized events are regulated to a T. So the Indiana State School Music Association events, we have a couple competitions throughout the state throughout the year, are certified sites, and those are the ones where they really crack down on the time penalties.
Yeah, well, all right. So if you're going to be at Chesterton, just know that you've got 28 minutes, no more, no less, to get your show on stage, perform it, and get off.
You're on the clock.
We've got a few minutes here before we hit the 1 hour mark because we started a couple minutes after the hour. So we're going to go down to Indianapolis and go to Center Grove's Best of the Midwest. This one in the small mixed division, we've got Roncalli, who we talked about earlier, as well as Franklin Central Encores, Cathedral, Kokomo, and Batesville. In the large mixed division, we've got another just absolute WWE style SmackDown. We've got Franklin Central, North Central, Fishers, Mount Zion, and Carroll. And so in the large women's division, we've got groups from all 5 of those schools as well. We have 4 of Indiana's top 10 groups as decided by our voting panel here. Franklin Central, I believe, is number 3 right now. North Central, number 4. Fishers, number 7. And Carroll, number 10. I might be off on Fishers by a couple places, but I think Carroll's at the 10, Franklin Central 2 or 3, and then North Central either 4 or 5. So, Adam, you're the Indiana guy here. How is this large mixed field shaping up?
I think this one will be a pretty defined Franklin Central win. Vocals, visuals, fantastic usage of show design and texture to show the musicality and talent in this group. And then I think the middle of the pack, which isn't really a middle of the pack because, for the record, the next 4 groups are absolutely phenomenal and compete at a very high level. Give me, and this is, I think, fairly close. Give me North Central, Mount Zion, Fishers, and then Carroll, which is also, I would be not shocked at all if it was completely flopped and went the exact opposite way. I think it could definitely shake up a bit around there. And then for small mixed, I have Roncalli, both captions, Cathedral, Batesville, and FC's prep group Encores.
Ethan, where are you at?
So, why is everyone going to Indiana? I know this one's majority Indiana, but everyone's going to Indiana this weekend, which is super exciting for that state because I mean they have some of the best competitions, and it's super cool to see everyone go there. I believe this is like Mount Zion's first time going to Center Grove in I don't know how long. I know Eric Taylor used to go there all the time, was Decatur Elite Energy, and he's won a few comps there, so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I think the treble division is going to be super cool to see how it plays out because I know it's all Indiana choirs, but you throw Mount Zion Lit-Fems in there, I don't know what those placements are going to be. So that's going to be something I think I'm personally going to be looking at because I think that's going to be super cool. But if you look at these mixed groups, I think majority of Indiana is going to prevail at this competition. Um, I have Franklin Central winning, and of course this is on Monday, so who knows? By the end of on Saturday, I'm probably going to have some completely different. But I have Franklin Central winning. I have North Central in the second spot. I don't know much about Fishers, but I know Fisher Sounders have been killing it. Do you know personally, Adam, if their ladies double?
So in the past, there's been about 15 or 20 of them that double, but as of this year, it is a new rule that they do not double. So the sound ladies are exclusively focused on sound. And for those of you unfamiliar with the Indianapolis circuit, sound has been one of the elite univoice groups in Indiana this past couple of years, and this year is no exception.
Yeah, that's really interesting because majority of the choirs I know, they really do allow doubles. So to say that there's like a strict line of no, you can't double, that's kind of interesting to see from a program.
That
But
actually
again, they
happens
have their
quite a bit
reasons.
in Indiana
Really?
too, which is yeah. I know there's Center Grove is well, that's because they practice every day of the week for 4 hours, but there's programs in Indiana that will have a pretty strict line for doubling or not doubling.
Yeah. Yeah. So to finish out my prediction, Franklin Central, I have them winning. North Central in second. Fisher sneaking up to the third spot, I think, and then Mount Zion's gonna be the fourth. I think Carroll is gonna round it out for the mixed groups. Will?
All right. Yeah. I'll just wrap this one up here. You guys have said a lot. Give me Franklin Central with the win. I'll actually take Mount Zion for second here. Second place at their first competition of the year at Troy. I'll pick them for another second here. I'll actually take Fishers as an upstart 3 over North Central. I think that when you have those varsity ladies just focusing on Electrum, I think that might lead to some positive things. North Central at the 4 and Carroll at the 5. Ron Colley for small mixed. And then in terms of large women's, I don't know. I think Franklin Central High Voltage versus North Central Descants versus, all of them,
Yeah,
because Carroll Select Sound is the best girls group in Fort Wayne, and Mount Zion's great in Illinois, and New Look Fishers and all that. So I'm not even going to take a stab at the women's
can
division.
I
Yeah.
give it a go?
Why?
I'll be quick.
Go for it.
Ready? Sound, vocals, high voltage visuals, and then we'll have Mount Zion La Femme follow right in there. Then you'll have North Central Descants and Carroll, which for their women's group being so fantastic in Fort Wayne, their mixed group is even better. So I feel so weird putting Carroll not in the top 2 or 3 spots for any competition ever. They sing amazing. Their ballad is a Jake Runestead concert choir song this year. So I think if anyone's the wild card going in this weekend, it's them. So
Yep. People forget that Select Sound beat Los Al Soundtracks last
Yeah.
year at HOA New York. So yeah, that's why I'm done. You don't want to hear from Ethan about Iowa. You don't want to hear from me about Indiana. But that's going to wrap this one up. As we said at the top of the show, this is available on YouTube and Spotify roughly an hour after this concludes. And please be sure to check homeroomshowchoir.com. We've got new stuff going up pretty much daily, every day this week. So make sure to check that out. For Ethan and Adam, I am William. Have a great show choir Saturday this weekend.